Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans. Welcome to Ramacrow. It's time for another voicemail. Today's voicemail is from an anonymous caller. Let's listen to what they have to say.
Hey, Lloyd. It's me again. I just left a voicemail. Thought occurred to me, and I've not been like you. I don't regret or have negative feelings towards witnesses themselves individually, and I'm certainly grateful for the life I've had. Although many people would say it was a life that's very traumatic. My question for you is, when you pointed out that there was flags in this pivotal convention, it shakes the very foundation of why daily I did not pledge allegiance to the flag in school. And not a big deal at the time for me, but looking back, I did absorb some ridicule and some embarrassment, etc. And so it kind of shakes that whole reason, which is, looking back, a little irritating. My question to you is, did you have a similar sort of like anti-nationalism, show that you do not support your government in a very visible way as a kid? Because, for me, the sacrifices I made as a kid were really not my biggest grievance in life. I'm grateful, and I choose to focus on. I've always choose to focus on the positive that came from it, which is I learned to read as an early age, and etc. Um, but anyway, I would love to talk with you because I just have so many thoughts, and I appreciate your work. Thanks. Bye. Oh,
Yeah, we've bleeped out the number there, so no worries there. But thank you for your message. As viewers will be able to deduce, this was actually the second of two messages. And if you don't mind, I've decided to reply to the second one because I've found the subject of more kind of, not just of more interest, but perhaps the previous voicemail is one that I've answered in previous videos, and I don't want to be repeating myself too much. I think this topic of nationalism and young Jehovah's Witnesses being required to make a stand regarding Christian neutrality conspicuously to the point where they invite ridicule, I think that's really a really interesting topic that I haven't really touched on before. Not that I can remember, at least. You've asked the question, did I experience what you experienced, namely going to school every day, in your case, and not doing the Pledge of Allegiance, to the point where you were subjected to, as you put it, ridicule and embarrassment. You seem to be quite philosophical about it all now, and it doesn't seem to have affected you too badly, although you've remembered the ridicule and embarrassment. It can't have been pleasant to go through at the time. And I think it's unfortunate when, speaking now as a father, although I'm sure many non-parents will relate to this, I think it's unfortunate when children are made to stand out as different and create an awkward situation for no good reason. Because going to school, let's face it, is stressful enough. I mean, children can just be really, really mean to each other, can't they? We've all had that experience, I think, to varying degrees when it comes to going to school. And I'm horrified at the idea of, say, Jessica, who's now in her second full year of school. I'm horrified of the prospect of her being subjected to anything like the level of, I'm just going to say it, bullying that I was subjected to. It seems so far that that's not the case, even though she's being raised secularly without any religion, I have no problem with her being involved in Easter celebrations or, I don't know, singing the occasional hymn or anything like that. I think making children make a stand that's not really their own stand, it's yours, and putting them in that situation is really unfortunate and will have lasting effects on them, even if it's not quite as devastating as in other areas of cultic abuse. I will say this, though, regarding nationalism, and you point out the video I made recently. If Tibor is gracious, a thumbnail will appear. It was Sushi 465, the Star-Spangled Banners of Cedar Point, in which I basically tell the story of one of the things that first got me into activism. And it's not really a huge deal, as I point out in the video. I just find it very interesting that at this key juncture in theocratic history, this key moment at the 1922 Cedar Point, Ohio Convention, there were quite obviously American flags draped very conspicuously on either side of the stage. And that obviously doesn't reconcile with the current stance regarding Christian neutrality and staying as far away from any show of national pride. I will say this, I find that while in many areas of my past life as a Jehovah's Witness, there is now a huge divergence in terms of who I am as a person and the things that I find acceptable or unacceptable. I obviously do not subscribe to many of the rules and regulations that were put on me as a Jehovah's Witness. But I can't say I've deviated too far in terms of feelings of nationalism. And maybe that's just me as an individual. Maybe that's just my personal politics. But I've never been that fussed about shows of patriotism. I actually, if I'm being completely honest, I find them quite juvenile. And I didn't go through the daily Pledge of Allegiance. We do not have that in English or British schools. I can, however, remember very vividly one evening where my family and I went to our local recreation centre. We went to the local sports hall, and there was I think there was an orchestra playing. I forget which composer it was or anything like that, but we went to see the local orchestra perform. And what my parents hadn't reckoned on, this all came flooding back when I listened to your message. What my parents hadn't reckoned on was the fact that this particular orchestra, the local Wilmslow Orchestra, I guess, at the beginning of each performance would play, as it was then, God Save the Queen. And I can remember very embarrassingly that happening and me and my mum and dad and sister having to kind of file out of the auditorium. I think we might have gone back in after it was over. We kind of snuck back in and resumed our seats. But that's kind of the moment that springs to mind when I think of conspicuously and embarrassingly refusing to participate in a show of nationalism or patriotism. And to be completely honest, if I were to be put in a situation now as a 43-year-old ex-Jehovah's Witness where I am required or expected to sing the lyrics to God Save the King, as it is now, I don't think I'd be able to do it. I'd at the very least really struggle or only do it out of politeness. But if I had like a choice, I mean, I'm an atheist, so I'm not just an atheist. I guess, an anti-monarchist. I think the monarchy is a really outdated and obsolete way of, presiding over a country or deciding who gets to be the head of state of a country. Obviously, not all Brits will agree with me there, but that's how I feel. So, as an atheist and an anti-monarchist, I'd really struggle with singing "God Save Our Gracious King," "Long Live Our Noble King," "God Save Our King." I'd struggle with invoking a deity that I don't believe in to save a king I've never met and whose power I question. Send him victorious, a nudge to colonial power, happy and glorious, long to rule over us, God save our king. I'm wishing him long life and prosperity. If he's our head of state, he should be wishing that on us. He should be wishing good health and long life on his quote unquote subjects, and doing everything he can to make sure they get the best possible health care they can get. So, right, almost from beginning to end, and maybe I've made a mistake with the lyrics somewhere. Little thing here, if Tibor finds a mistake, maybe there will be. But from beginning to end, I have a problem with those lyrics, and it's nothing whatsoever to do with my Jehovah's Witness background. Obviously, many people watching this will have different politics to me, will feel intensely proud to be American or Australian or British or Canadian or German, to cite the 5 countries that most watch my channel, to the point where they take delight in singing their national anthem. But if I think about what a national anthem is and what it represents, because let's face it, they're quite stirring, aren't they? Or most anthems are quite stirring. Even like, I can appreciate that God Save the Queen is quite a stirring piece of music. Even though I don't like the lyrics and don't relate to the lyrics, it's a stirring piece of music. Well, so was We Thank You, Jehovah. And I constantly remember being on the floor of the auditorium of the sports arena where our conventions were held when I was a Jehovah's Witness, and it was my job to escort the speakers to the platform. So very often I'd find myself right slap bang in the middle of the convention where the platform was, with thousands of Jehovah's Witnesses all around me belting out, "We thank you, Jehovah." And even now, just thinking about it sends goosebumps. It was a very emotional song, or it invoked emotions in me that I guess I still get a little bit of now when I think about that situation. But all that proves is that you can have music do whatever you want to in terms of evoking emotions towards more or less anything. That's the power of music. It says nothing about what the music is being written for, or the reason why the music is being performed, or who the music is designed to honor. It's more about our psychology as human beings. And I've kind of rambled on a little bit on this subject. It's kind of more than I intended to say, but hopefully you can understand where I'm coming from. You asked me a personal question, to what extent do I feel I was perhaps stulted in my development with this kind of lack of patriotism? I would say not at all, although I probably do resent any kind of embarrassing situations I was put through needlessly. But it just so happens in my own situation that when I think of shows of patriotism, and particularly singing the national anthem, for example, I really, really hope humanity moves on from all that, to be completely honest with you. I don't view this planet as being a collection of various states and countries with firmly fixed boundaries that should be adhered to for the rest of time. I see Earth as a spaceship, and I see human beings as its passengers. And I think the sooner we learn to respect and care about our fellow humans, irrespective of what part of the planet they were born on, the sooner we'll have something approaching peace and justice and prosperity on our planet. So I hope I've answered your question. If you would like to leave a voicemail, the thing to do is go to speakpipe.com/Cedars, remembering to indicate clearly if you don't want me to broadcast your message. But that's all we have time for. Thank you for watching.